Namaste. My name is Sharda Narayanan. I have been interested in Indian knowledge systems since a long time and have learned a lot about the current state of Indological studies from Sri Rajiv Malhotra ji. While we were discussing this project on the 10 heads of Ravana, I chose to review the writing of Dr. Kancha Ilaiah, who is well known for his Hindu-phobic views as well as advocacy of Christian proselytization. It's been a very depressing experience to read his shallow writing on Hindu thought, which is mainly intended to bolster his ill-conceived hatred and call for violence. His writing is a free run on abusing Hindus. Nowhere while making his baseless allegations is he able to quote Hindu scripture, nor even refer to any real incident while claiming human rights violations. Every economic and social problem, and even crises in international trade and commerce, he blames on what he calls the Brahminical way of thought, which he is not even able to define. It is appalling how this has not yet launched criminal inquiry or legal proceedings. It's shocking that liberal-minded people should consider his writing a serious academic work. It has taken Sri Rajiv Malhotra ji to address this huge injustice on the Hindu community and to critique his work to show how much is wrong with it. Our chapter in this book is basically based on two books in particular. That is Why I Am Not a Hindu, brought out in 2002, and Post-Hindu India in 2009. He claims in the preface that he intends to empower the Dalit Bahujan forces of India in all spheres of activity. This would have been a laudable endeavor had it been done on a more constructive basis. What the books in fact achieve, with little emphasis on facts, is to make their point with shock value and to demonize Brahmins, who are often considered stumbling blocks to the agenda of religious conversion. Although the word Hindu is used, it is only the Brahmin community against whom Dr. Ilaiah aims his ire. There are 3 points of constructive criticism in social sciences that do come through in these books. 1, gluttony, rapacity, and human greed connected with consumerism. 2, gender issues and housework. 3, local indigenous knowledge systems neglected in the march towards globalization. Now, none of the above issues are inherently related to Hinduism, but are common problems that are faced by every community at every economic level in India and most other countries. But he lays the blame for every problem at the Brahmin's door. The word Hinduism is used in an arbitrary manner, not connected with philosophy of epistemology, and it is very difficult to view his writing as having any academic rigor. Most people with even a passing familiarity with the ancient cultural history and deep symbolism of Hinduism would exercise caution in their comments for fear of exposing their own ignorance. Not so Dr. Ilaiah, who blithely plunges to any depth, no matter how low. There are many personal and unsubstantiated attacks on the Brahmin people in their private lives also. From one, Why I'm Not a Hindu, he says, if a Brahmin has some extra rice, it will not be given away. From the other book, furthermore, Brahmanism looked upon every dead body as a potential ghost, and it was believed that with the burning of the body, the ghost also gets destroyed. The mother of all parasitic cultures is the culture of Brahmanism. What the book is full of is very strong statements, prejudiced, biased statements like this, none of them backed by any kind of evidence or quotations. And they seem to be addressed to an audience not familiar with the Hindu culture or the notions and concepts of Hinduism, or to portray to the international community how regressive and exploitive this whole school of thought is. That seems to be the aim. On the Hindu gods, there are so many errors in what he says. It is quite evident that he is not familiar with the Puranic lore and is not really familiar with the persona or the incidents related to these gods. This god, Brahma of wisdom, is armed with weapons to attack his enemies, the Dalit Bahujans. The source of education, Saraswati, is herself an illiterate woman. On Mahavishnu, he says he is monogamous and married to Lakshmi. If she, Lakshmi, came to know that a Dalit Bahujan man or woman has acquired wealth or is revolting against the caste system, she is required to bring that to the notice of Vishnu, who will go and exterminate such persons. Again, there is no information on where he received this kind of information from. There is a very serious misrepresentation of the teaching of a Bhagavad Gita that says Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana. Dr. Rilaya presents this notion as to mean that the peasants should toil while the fruits should go to the priests. He actually says this in a different place. Here, he says he would have not understood the meaning of this stanza if a foreigner had not translated the Gita into English. This highlights the problem of relying on foreigners' translations while being oblivious to better sources. And this is a very big problem today that we have globally. There is a lot of distortion of history to suit agenda, and there are many issues. There are very serious gender issues and issues of exploitation and human rights violations. I think in this short presentation, in these few minutes, I have been able to show a little bit of the kind of writing that we are dealing with. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shubhodip Mukhopadhyay, and I will continue the discussion started by my co-author Sharda. So first we will explore some of Dr. Elaya's research principles and methodologies, and then we'll touch upon some of his academic positions. So this is what he has to say in one of his writings, that he sees critical writing as something very important, and that social sciences means nothing without critical writing. So research in general entails the process of finding answers to specific questions. And especially in the case of social sciences, this is more important since it deals with the domain of humans. The four characteristics of critical writing: we should ideally have large sample sizes, the analysis should be unbiased and factual, largest possible extent, and a person should be open-minded. However, he clearly says in his books, as even Sharda had pointed out, that his work is semi-autobiographical in nature, and he has received inputs from few of his friends and colleagues. From that, he forms the basis of many of his theories on the caste dynamics in India. In other words, the sample size is quite small. On the other hand, he makes use of this small sample size to make large generalizations on the entire Hindu community. So as it is clear from these quotes taken from his different books and essays, that he has a deep disdain for Hinduism, and he is very open about that. He openly admits that. See, for us, from the point of view of scholarship, it really does not matter whether somebody has certain religious beliefs or not. However, when that belief starts impacting the nature of scholarship, that becomes a problem of concern. If you see, he characterizes Hinduism as some sort of a cult which worships violent figures. It's a club of the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and Baniyas. That is the way he characterizes Hinduism, a very pejorative way of characterization. But on the other hand, he contrasts Hinduism with monotheistic religions and religions which were constructed, that is the term used, constructed by prophets ostensibly for the betterment of humankind. So he's very clear on that front. And he encourages the Dalit community to move out of the Hindu fold and embrace Christianity. So he writes that on many occasions. And he's very happy to quote that this is happening in a big way. The conversion of to Christianity is happening in a big way. He's extremely happy about that. And he also feels that it is necessary that the church, the Western church, not the Indian church, the Western church provides English medium education to entire Dalit community, and each church should sponsor one school. So he has a detailed roadmap of how he feels the future should look like, and he also feels that Christianity alone is with a true English knowing universal God. That is the solution that he believes in, and the primitive practices, so-called, which associates with Hinduism, those must be rejected. So here is a poem where he also founds his thesis. Next, I will talk about some of his claims, some of which are very difficult to verify, as Sharda had pointed out, and maybe also incorrect. Like, for example, this one, he associates Harappa with, he says it has nothing to do with Vedic or the Aryan civilization, so-called, but it is linked to the South Indian culture. So how does he arrive at that? So he says Harappa, and he takes the last word, Appa. And in southern India, Appa and Ayya come together as a pair. So Ayya he links to Jeremiah. So it becomes Jeremiah. And from that, he links this to Old Testament. So this is the kind of reasoning he's put in this case. Yeah, so based on these name endings, he arrives at a conclusion that the Harappan civilization is linked to the Old Testament. So this is one example. There are more examples, like he accuses Indra of being the original leader who exterminated the entire Indus civilization. So it must be noted that this is actually a very old theory. Those who have read the work of Sir Mortimer Wheeler, he had very famously said, Indra stands accused. He had actually used that. So he builds upon that theory, and he comes up with his conclusions. Again, he accuses all manners of evils to Hinduism without any evidence. Murder, rape, every kind of charge he puts on Hindus. This is actually one of the most surprising things that he says, that India is backward scientifically, or has been backward scientifically, because of the caste system. This is exactly the opposite of all that is known about India's advancement in science and technology, whether in the field of astronomy, mathematics, medicine, surgery, Ayurveda, music, metallurgy, architecture. In fact, Infinity Foundation has published 14 volumes on the history of Indian science and technology, covering areas like animal husbandry, water management, iron, zinc, and other areas. So probably we need to present a copy of these volumes to him so that he can just update himself on these areas. One more example of assertions which are not backed by any facts. So he characterizes Hanuman as a South Indian Dalit. I think that is the term that he uses. So the point is, see, it doesn't matter, because even if he's a South Indian Dalit or not, nobody seems to mind that, because entire northern India is dotted with Hanuman temples. So even if he were, it is irrelevant to the cause of spirituality. Oh, in fact, just another point, that even today Hanuman is a resident deity of the most of India's indigenous gyms or akhadas. So he's a resident deity of that. So it is an irrelevant point and unverifiable claim. I mean, we don't know where he gets that these ideas from. So what is the implication of all this? To what extent is his research impartial and honest? So given his personal animosity, it is very unlikely that his research is unbiased. I mean, it's evident that there's a lot of bias in this. And what is more worrying is that his book, Why I'm Not a Hindu, is a very highly cited work. Like as many as 400 citations I found on Google Scholar. And in fact, it has been cited in the definitive work, Colonialism, Post-Colonialism, which has been recommended as exactly the sort of book teachers want the students to read. So if this is what students start reading at the very beginning, they will have a very negative impression of India and Hinduism as a whole. The other implication is that generally the way we characterize Hinduism as a system which promotes yoga, well-being, mental well-being, sustainable living, holistic healthcare. So this he finds problematic. It's a culture which promotes mutual respect, but this is not acceptable to him. On the other hand, faiths which preach at best tolerance, that he finds very acceptable. And the key takeaway from this is that Hinduism is evil and Christianity is good. This is the key takeaway message, and that Hinduism is a problem which can be solved through Christianity. Again, I like to add that I'm not against Christianity. This is what he's saying in his through his work. We need to ask: is Christianity indeed a solution in this context? Given the problems that he has mentioned, is it indeed a solution? Some of these questions are based on Rajivji's work. So he had asked the same question in Breaking India. So is the church really qualified to cure Indian society, assuming that it has some evil? What is their past track record in solving social evils in third world country in that context? Do they have superior human rights records? So one way of looking at this is, let us look at the condition of, say, many people who adopted Christianity in India. So that is a good way of looking at that. Assuming that they converted to escape the shackles of evil Hinduism, so assuming that is the framework, so today they must be living in life of dignity at par with rest of the Indians. That is the hypothesis I'm going with. But however, the reality is quite different. The other part of the question is, this is the point of view from India. The other is the global track record. So has Christianity actually worked as a solution to this problem of social evils in other parts of the world? That is also some issues, like say problems in Latin America and African Americans in the US. So has it solved their problems? maybe not. So we would also like to build upon this thesis. So he maintains a studied silence on many of Christianity's own problems. Again, this is, I'll just like to reiterate, I'm not against Christianity or anything, but I'm just comparing similar problems in both religions. And the solution he's promoting this as a solution to that as a problem. So there are a lot of examples we have seen on videos of miracle healings in churches. So he's very silent on that. Or there are biblical stories which he accepts as reality. I mean, there are no questions asked about that, whereas he questions Hindu deities on different fronts. And there have been numerous abuse cases around the world which have come on media over the last many years. Whether it's Protestant or Catholic, it's been there on media. So the point is, social issues like discrimination, greed, exploitation, issues which he attributes to the Hindu community, they are universal in nature, and India is no exception to that. India has many issues, and we cannot deny that we have had many social issues. And the point is that whatever issues we had, it was our gurus, social leaders within the Indian community, the Hindu community, who have recognized it and tried their best to solve it, one evil at a time. That has been the approach in India. And as a system, Hinduism has undergone numerous changes over the last hundreds of years. Reform after reforms have kept on happening. And all this happened without the intervention of any foreign power or somebody dispensing human rights. Even without that, the changes have kept on happening. But what the kind of activism which Sri Elias is promoting, that is very toxic in nature, and it ends up fragmenting the country. That is the biggest the biggest worry that I have, that in the guise of upliftment, he is promoting a very divisive agenda. That is why the title of the essay is Bharat Vikhandar. So it's a play on the term Vikhandan, which is the Hindi translation for Rajiv Ji's book Breaking India. So he's the guy bringing about the Vikhandan of India and facilitating that. Thank you.